Today on the deep dive, we're going to take a flashlight to, well, the most fundamental blueprint there is, yours. You shared some amazing sources with us covering heredity and variation, and they all kind of circle this classic paradox. How are you so similar to your parents, but at the same time, completely unique?
That is the mission today. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're diving into the rulebook of inheritance.
The rule book, I like that.
Because the sources, they lay out these precise mechanics that govern how traits pass from one generation to the next.
Yeah.
And crucially, how nature makes sure there's always, enough variation in the mix.
To allow life to adapt.
Exactly, to adapt and persist. It's really a story of similarity that's achieved through constant, subtle difference.
Okay, so let's unpack that. The process of reproduction, any reproduction, it always ends up with a new individual that shares the basic body plan of its parent.
Right. We're recognizably human. A pea plant is recognizably a pea plant.
But built right into that process is variation, those subtle differences.
And the way that variation gets generated tells you so much about the organism. I mean, think about the simplest form. Asexual reproduction.
Like a bacterium dividing.
Yeah, exactly. The two cells that result are, well, they're basically clones. Any differences you see are usually tiny, just small mistakes made when the DNA is copied.
So they're almost like random errors.
That's a good way to put it. Which
Yeah.
means if you look at a huge population, like a field of sugarcane that's mostly reproducing asexually, the plants look almost identical. The variation is just minimal.
Okay, but then you have sexual reproduction.
And that completely flips the script.
Yeah.
You compare any two people in a population, and the diversity is just striking. It's a mechanism that seems specifically designed to mix and match genetic material.
Maximizing those successful variations and doing it fast.
Right. And what's so interesting is that these variations don't just show up once and then stop. They build on each other. They accumulate.
So the next generation inherits all the differences their parents had, plus any new ones that came up in their own reproductive cycle. It's like compounding interest on novelty.
That's a great analogy. I mean, if you trap that over just a few generations, you really see the power of it.
Yeah.
Imagine 4 individuals in, say, the 3rd generation. They'll all be different from each other, even though they share that original blueprint.
So why bother? Why is just being similar not good enough?
Because the world is always changing.
Yeah.
And that pileup of differences is absolutely vital for survival. Not all of these variations have an equal shot at making it.
Okay, so it's not just about looking different, it's a survival advantage.
It's all about survival advantage. Let's go back to those bacteria. Imagine a sudden, severe heat wave hits.
Okay.
The vast majority of them, who all share the same heat-sensitive design, they're going to die. But if just a few happen to have a random variation that lets them withstand that heat,
They're the ones who survive and reproduce.
and just like that, the environment has selected for that specific trait. That selection process is the absolute foundation of evolution. Without variation, life just couldn't respond to pressure.
So to bring this back to something we can see, I don't know, right now in the mirror, is there a simple human trait that shows this?
Oh, absolutely. The earlobe is the classic example you'll find in almost any genetic source.
Attached or free, right.
Exactly. The lowest part of your ear, is it closely attached to your head, or is it free hanging? It's a really clean, observable example of the kind of inherited variation we all carry.
So we've got that traits are passed down, variation builds up, it helps us survive. But
Yeah.
how reliable is that whole process? How do you make sure that when a tall plant reproduces, you don't just get like genetic chaos?
Now we're getting to the rules.
Yeah.
This is where we have to talk about Gregor Mendel. Before him, everyone just sort of assumed inheritance was like mixing paint.
Tall plus short equals medium.
Right, blending. But our sources credit Mendel, who was working back in the 1800s, with bringing some real rigor to this. He didn't just look at his pea plants, he counted them.
He brought math into biology.
He really did. He was a pioneer. And he worked out that in sexual reproduction, every child gets 2 factors for every trait. One from the mother, one from the father.
Equal contribution.
Practically equal, yes. So let's follow his most famous experiment, the monohybrid cross. He's just looking at one thing, plant height.
Tall versus short. He starts with a pure tall plant and crosses it with a pure short plant,
Right.
the P generation.
And the result, the F1 or first generation, was the big surprise. It totally challenged that blending idea. There were no medium plants, none.
Every single one was tall.
Every single one. The short traits seemed to have just vanished.
Which, if it was like paint, should have been impossible, would have been diluted forever. So this suggests traits are more like discrete packets of information.
Exactly. Mendel realized the shortness was still there. It just wasn't being expressed. So we took those F1 tall plants and let them self-pollinate.
To create the F2 generation.
And if blending were true, you'd just expect more tall plants. But the short trait came back.
And not just randomly.
Not at all. It came back in a perfect, precise ratio. For every 3 tall plants, there was 1 short plant.
A 3-to-1 ratio.
That mathematical proof was everything. It showed that inheritance is particulate. It's like passing on marbles, not mixing paint.
And this is where we get the terminology we still use. Mendel called them factors. We call them genes.
Right. And we call the different versions of that gene alleles. So for the height gene, you have a tall allele, which we can call capital T, and a short allele, a lowercase t.
Which leads right to dominance and recessiveness.
It does. Tallness, the capital T, is dominant. If a plant has even 1 copy of that allele, so a TT or a TT, it's going to be tall. It masks the other one.
And shortness is recessive.
The recessive trait. It only shows up visually if the plant gets 2 copies of that recessive allele. So only TT. That's why the F1 plants were all TT. They looked tall, but they secretly carried the instruction for shortness.
Okay, that explains the ratio, but I want to pause here. How does a letter on a page, a T or a T, actually make a plant tall or short? What's the mechanism?
For that, we have to jump forward a bit to molecular biology. A gene is basically a recipe. It's a section of DNA with the instructions to make a specific protein, and it's the protein that does all the work.
So the gene isn't the height, it's the blueprint for the catalyst for height.
Precisely. In the plant height example, growth needs a specific hormone. The production of that hormone is helped along by an enzyme. Now, if the tall allele is efficient, it produces a really good enzyme.
More enzyme, more hormone, taller plant.
You got it. And the recessive T allele, that usually has a small change, a mutation, that makes the enzyme it produces less efficient, or maybe not functional at all.
So if you only have those less efficient enzymes, the T combination, you get less hormone and a shorter plant.
That's the path. Gene to enzyme to hormone to physical trait.
That is so cool. Okay, so now we have to scale up. Mendel didn't just stop with 1 trait, did he? He did the dihybrid cross.
He did. He wanted to know what happens when you track 2 things at once, like tall versus short and round versus wrinkled seeds.
He crossed a tall plant with round seeds with a short one with wrinkled seeds.
And the F1 generation, just as you'd predict, was all tall and all round. That just confirmed that both tallness and roundness were dominant.
But the real insight came from the next generation, the F2.
This is the genius part. Because if those traits were linked, if tall always had to trouble with round because they came from the same parent.
You should only get the original 2 combinations back, tall round and short wrinkled.
Right. But wait, why would they be linked? If the inheritance system is so reliable, why wouldn't the traits from one parent just stick together?
That's a good question. It seems like they should.
But that's not what Mendel found. In that F2 generation, he got his parental combinations, sure, but he also got brand new combinations.
He got tall plants with wrinkled seeds and short plants with round seeds.
Yes. This proved that the inheritance of height and the inheritance of seed shape were completely independent of each other. The gene for one doesn't care what the gene for the other is doing.
The law of independent assortment.
That's the one. But that independence, it creates a big mechanical problem, doesn't it? If you get one full set of genes from your mom and one from your dad, why aren't all of your mom's genes linked together?
How do they decouple?
The answer is in how the DNA is packaged. The entire blueprint isn't one single super long thread. It's chopped up into separate independent pieces. We call them chromosomes.
So it's not one giant book, it's a set of volumes.
A perfect analogy, a set of volumes.
Okay.
And critically, you have 2 copies of each volume, one from your mother, one from your father.
And the magic is in how you make the next generation's library.
Yes, when the body makes a germ cell, an egg or a sperm, to keep things stable, that germ cell has to end up with only a single set of instructions, just 1 copy of each volume.
So it has to choose.
It has to choose. From each pair, it takes 1 chromosome. It might take mom's version of chromosome 1, but dad's version of chromosome 2.
And that choice is random for every single pair.
Completely random. The choice for chromosome 1 has 0 influence on the choice for chromosome 2. That random shuffling is the physical mechanism that guarantees independent assortment. It's what creates all that amazing diversity Mendel saw.
It's incredible. Those rules are so universal. But let's look at one really specific trait in humans, sex determination. It uses a slightly different rule set, doesn't it?
It does. And it's important to remember, not all life uses genetics for this. In some reptiles, it's the temperature of the egg that decides the sex.
Wow.
Yeah. And some animals, like snails, can even change sex as adults.
But for humans, it's pretty much set at conception. It's genetic. So
Oh.
how does that work if both parents contribute equally?
We have to look at our 23 pairs of chromosomes. 22 of those pairs, the autosomes, are perfectly matched. They're the same whether you're male or female. It's that 23rd pair, the sex chromosomes. That's different.
The mismatched pair.
The mismatched pair, in men anyway. Women have a perfect pair of sex chromosomes, which we call XX. Men have a mismatched pair. One normal-sized X and one much shorter chromosome, the Y.
So when a woman makes an egg cell,
It can only contain an X chromosome. Every single egg carries an X. But the father produces two types of sperm in roughly equal numbers. Half carry an X and half carry a Y.
which means the father's contribution is the deciding factor.
That's the whole mechanism. If a sperm with an X fertilizes the egg, the child gets XX and is a girl. If a sperm with a Y gets there first, the child gets XY and is a boy.
And since it's a 50-50 shot either way, you get a roughly even split of boys and girls in the population.
Exactly.
This has been such a clear breakdown of the rules that govern our existence. Let's just quickly recap the big ideas we've pulled from the source material.
Okay, first, variation is the engine. It's inherited, it accumulates, and it's what gives life a fighting chance when the environment changes.
Second, Mendel's discovery of dominant and recessive alleles showed us that inheritance is particulate, not blending. Traits are passed on like marbles, which is why they can seem to skip a generation.
Third, traits are inherited independently. Our DNA is packaged into separate chromosomes, and they get shuffled randomly. That's what allows for all these new combinations every generation.
And finally, human sex is determined by that special mismatched pair of X and Y chromosomes, with the father's contribution being the one that determines the outcome.
Right. And, we spent a lot of time talking about the huge diversity that comes from sexual reproduction and that independent assortment of chromosomes. But our sources started by pointing out that asexually reproducing organisms, which just rely on those little DNA copy errors, are also incredibly successful.
Yeah, they don't have that amazing reshuffling power.
And that kind of leaves us with a final question for you to think about. Since those organisms lack this robust mechanism for creating new trait combinations, how do their simpler, less diverse inheritance systems still let them survive and adapt over the long run? It makes you wonder if there are other strategies for resilience, maybe based on, just sheer numbers and speed. Something to keep digging into.